All right, good morning and welcome to our first Tech Talk for 2023. And My name is Wayne Welk, and I'm just going to really quickly introduce our guest speaker and our topic. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Andy Zimmerman with Grace Technologies. And our topic today is going to be around the GraceSense wireless condition monitoring system and their IoT solution, as well as looking at their new add-on profile for Studio 5000 to help integrate this into our Logix platform, which was introduced towards the end of last year. So with that, I'm just going to turn over to Andy and let him present from here. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you. So I've got kind of a loose presentation around our kind of portfolio of predictive maintenance technologies. This is kind of structured around a talk that I typically give just to folks who are interested in starting to pursue a journey into the IoT world. And so we'll certainly go into depth on our given products, but the goal here is just to kind of give an entry level foray into what it is we do, what it is this world looks like using industrial Internet of Things based technologies to monitor critical equipment. And then hopefully leave some time at the end to just do a nice question and answer session to get some real direct feedback on anything that people have a focus on. So with that, I'm Andy Zimmerman. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Grace Technologies. For those of you who don't know Grace, we're an electrical safety company at heart. And we build products that are designed to make the maintenance process safer, smarter, and more productive. So today, I'm going to make some assumptions about everybody in the audience. I think everybody who has interest in this discussion topic typically is spending their time dealing with the industrial world, right, in a controls or a safety or a maintenance or reliability kind of role. I'm also assuming that we who come to these sorts of meetings or talks have a desire to learn more about how connected devices can improve those areas in the industrial setting. But I think there still is a lot of ambiguity in the community about how we can leverage smart devices in the IoT space to really drive value in the industrial environment, right? When we bring these new technologies alongside kind of the historical industrial technology, a lot of times there's clashes in terms of how things work together, how a maintenance team actually adopts that sort of new technology, and it creates conflict between the new and the old. So that's really what I'm expecting from folks coming to this particular presentation, and I'll try to address some of those conflicts over the next kind of 20 to 30 minutes here. So again, if you don't know Grace, we're about a 30-year-old company. We just entered our second generation of family leadership as Phil's son Drew took over as CEO in 2021. Over that time, we've spent most of those 30 years as a Rockwell and Compass partner, now a technology partner. So we know the Rockwell automation ecosystem really well. We've established ourselves as a leader in electrical safety, and certainly sell our products globally through both that Rockwell ecosystem and through that distribution-centric mindset. So when we kind of brought on the IoT line a few years ago, we really approached it from that perspective of a company that really was immersed in the industrial space. So the technology that I'm presenting you today was developed at my old company, actually, under grants that were funding a lot of different types of IoT research. So we were applying technology to bridges, to buildings, to wind turbines, to partially collapsed structures, and then obviously to industrial equipment, right? When we brought this into Grace, we've really taken that application focus and honed in on the industrial part of this, trying to build systems that are kind of optimized for the industrial ecosystem. So before I kind of kick into the product line, I want to give just a brief overview of what I mean when I say industrial Internet of Things. And I know many of you have probably heard me give this presentation before and seen this slide. It's got a lot of buzzwords, but I think it does encapsulate what IIoT is. It can be defined as a network of machines, computers, and people that enable intelligent industrial operations using advanced data analytics for transformational business outcomes, right? So again, lots of buzzwords, but when you boil that down, we're talking about the machines, that's the equipment that we're monitoring, and the technology that we're using, sensors and stuff that we're putting on those pieces of equipment, coupled with the computers, that's the kind of intelligence, the autonomous intelligence that we sit inside processors or PCs or PLCs that are in that same ecosystem. And then most importantly, we bring that together with the people and the processes that make decisions based on the data that comes in from those systems. And if we can bring all these things together, we have the potential, I think, with this new age of IIoT to really drive tremendous value in the industrial ecosystem. So there's a few reasons why this is a big deal right now, and why these technologies are starting to emerge over the last 5 years in the mainstream. Number one, I'm sure this is probably the draw to most of you today, is that IoT technologies really do promise to reduce plant downtime. We put that number at about $20 billion of lost revenue every year in the process industries, and as we find that with route-based inspections on the maintenance side, we can't do that daily. So the idea is that by putting sensors in place that can help you monitor in real time, we can detect issues before they become large. And as a result of that, we can reduce our overall downtime throughout a plant. We also, in kind of this post-COVID age, can really use IoT to help augment or replace skilled maintenance personnel. So we've seen at a lot of our customer sites, a lot of the experienced maintenance personnel have retired, and as a result of that, it's hard to fill those spots with young college grads who are kind of driven more towards the design side of the world. And so I think these technologies can step into that gap a little bit and help augment that workforce that's leaving with some insights into what might be going wrong with a particular piece of equipment. And then third, and potentially foremost, I think the underlying technologies that underpin the industrial Internet of Things, things like the cloud, things like affordable sensors, things like low cost, low power wireless communications, these have all kind of become mainstream. And so this is allowing us to really drive towards industrialized Internet of Things solutions. So when we boil this down, the reason why IIoT is important and why people are talking about it today is we typically see one of two things when we talk to a customer. We either have a situation where we have very little maintenance budget available and our downtime costs are just weighing us down, right? We're seeing more downtime than we'd like. On the flip side of that, we occasionally run into a customer that's actually overspending on maintenance. So they're able to keep their downtime numbers where they want, but they're doing it in a really inefficient way, using either a lot of manual labor or just overspending on repair and replace instead of trying to prevent problems before they kind of happen. So regardless of what scenario you're walking into, the way I like to view this is that by adding an IoT component to your maintenance spend, you're actually kind of equilibrating that scale, right? You're bringing this into an optimal state where your downtime numbers are where you want them for your organization, but your spend is optimized in order to achieve those results. So we already talked about, the $20 billion that we could potentially be saving using these sorts of devices in the United States per year. That's the real reason why I think these predictive maintenance technologies are emerging. But secondarily, and this is near and dear to our hearts here at Grace as kind of a safety-centric company, 70% of all workplace injuries actually happen during reactive maintenance. So the idea is if we can deploy these technologies, these IoT-based kind of smart systems to look for failure, we ideally can schedule our maintenance activities in such a way that we don't have as much reactive maintenance going on. And as a result of that, there's going to be a considerable amount of reduction in workplace injury and incidents that kind of lead to safety issues. So there is kind of that second tie for us here at Grace in particular. So before I kind of kick into the product line, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we've seen historically, and really the industry has seen historically with deploying these sorts of kind of IoT technologies in the industrial space. And to do that, I'm going to go back to a survey that's pretty old now. This was a Cisco survey done in 2017, So this was kind of before that major boom in IoT work. And they found at that time that 74% of all of the IoT projects that they had surveyed were failing to meet expectations. And I think that's probably similar to what we have seen. It's very difficult to get a strong IoT project out the door and working in a way that meets expectations. And there's kind of three main reasons for that. Number one, the solutions tend to solve single issue problems in isolation. I'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail in the coming slide. So what that means is we bought a thing and it's giving us a solution in one space, but it's not solving the bigger problem, right? They lack scalability, meaning, yeah, we can solve it on one piece of equipment or one line, but when we try to scale it, the solution breaks down. And thirdly, they tend to not work well with legacy systems. And in the context of this talk, that's really the PLC, the control system that IoT technologies tend to maybe chafe with a bit. So that first challenge, this isolation problem, you tend to see solutions that focus on one issue. So vibration analysis is a good example of that. And you can solve that with one of many different kind of solutions on the market, but it's difficult then to move from vibration to maybe monitoring tank levels or expanding that into other parts of the facility that are not vibration centric. And as a result of this need for multiple systems, that really tends to lead to user confusion, poor adoption of the technology, and just those multitude of dashboards are causing people to not use the technology to its full potential. So that the second challenge that I want to talk about is that of scalability. It's pretty easy with an IoT system, ours included, to do a simple proof of concept. Bring in a couple nodes, put them on an asset, see how it performs, but then to scale that from one piece of equipment to a plant is a lot of times a pretty large lift. And that can be due to a number of reasons. So a successful IoT system really needs to be able to scale from that proof of concept level up to a full plant, by using techniques that make that possible. Third challenge is that many IoT systems require new knowledge to be gained within a given organization. And a lot of times that means, hey, I've got a new cloud dashboard. You've got some new piece of information that you haven't had to deal with before. And this kind of flies counter to the fact that most industrial facilities have millions of dollars of control equipment that they've invested in, whether it's PLCs or SCADAs or HMIs. They already have a system in place to convey data to the users, the people, and the processes in that facility. So, the way we've seen it at Grace, and really where we've been focused in a lot of ways over the last couple of years, is to drive IoT systems that natively integrate with the controls environment in both new and old facilities. So just to kind of bring that all together, right? A successful IoT solution is going to need data that's easy to gather. It's going to need to provide analysis of that data to make people's decisions easier. It's going to need to be able to convey that information through legacy systems. And by doing that, it's going to drive the ability to tackle pretty much any application in the industrial environment in a scalable way. And then allow us to integrate both with kind of legacy and cutting edge systems in one. So that's kind of what our system is targeting. And are we 100% there yet? No, but that's the path that we're on, and we hope to be able to support with the GraceSense predictive maintenance line. So at a very high level, what does this line do, right? We save our customers money by trying to minimize unplanned downtime, and that allows them to optimize their maintenance budget spend across the goals that they're trying to get at. And we do that by providing robust wireless sensor hardware. We've got a cloud-based solution. We've got real-time alerts, and we also have, and this looks like an old sales slide, so I actually apologize there. We also have all the controls integration, which the add-on profile is a new thing, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. So when we look at GraceSense across the product line, there's really four main kind of components to that puzzle. And I'll talk about each of these in kind of separate detail, but I wanted to give you just that high-level product line overview. You've got the hotspot monitor. We have a field mount vibration and temperature node. We've got a set of configurable panel mount wireless sensing hardware. These also perform as gateways in that wireless network. And then we've got a set of kind of data delivery mechanisms that are both cloud-based and can reside within the PLC. All right. So if we're going to use this GraceSense system and we're going to do it effectively, we have found are really four main keys to successfully deploying this. A, it's important to have comprehensive data collection capabilities, and that's something that Grace offers. We also have the ability to produce actionable information from that. We really strive not to capture tons of data that's never processed, but to provide insights from that data. And then drive meaningful alarms and alerts out of that data and seamlessly integrate those alerts and alarms with whatever exists in the facility that's being effectively used today. All right, so I'm gonna simplify this in the effort to try to stay on time here. But the benefit of having a comprehensive data collection system is it's going to let you tackle any application in an industrial environment, right? And the reason that's important is that if you have an electrical system, it's going to require different sensors than, say, a pump or a motor that's rotating, right? If you're looking at a structural system like a crane, again, the approach that's needed and the data that we need to capture to know if that piece of equipment is failing is completely different. So a comprehensive suite of technology to monitor things is a really important component to a successful IoT deployment. We've done this in a couple of different ways. I'll start with our panel mount node here. This is a flexible sensing interface that's both wireless and allows you to collect data from pretty much any sensor you would imagine. So it sits inside one of our standard GracePort housings. We can deploy this either with battery or with a wall power. These are typically mounted on either a panel, or we can produce a small enclosure that they can sit inside. And then into the back of this, we can configure out what sort of sensors you want to bring in. So whether that's a temperature sensor, a current sensor, pressure sensor, whatever that is, if it's 4 to 20 milliamps, 0 to 10 volts, or some sort of targeted thing like a thermocouple. We can configure out the design of these using a product kind of naming scheme that allows us to configure these in-house in any way you might want, and we can bring that data wirelessly up to the cloud or provide that to the PLC. And I'll talk about how that works in a couple of seconds here. These also serve as the gateways in our network. So we can actually add to one of these our LTE modules, which gets you cellular data up to the cloud, Wi-Fi, same thing, up to the cloud, or we can produce that data back into the PLC or the control system using Ethernet IP or Modbus TCP IP. This is that part numbering scheme that I mentioned, and I'm not going to touch on that much here. Second way we develop comprehensive data collection capabilities is to really develop targeted technologies for specific applications. So this hotspot monitor is really designed for medium voltage issues where you're looking for hotspots, typically in bus bar. So this can be squirreled away. It's a good replacement for a thermographic inspection. We have a fiber optic temperature sensor that runs into either our 9-channel or our 18-channel devices that allow you to non-conductively monitor those hotspots. So again, these can be deployed in those high voltage, kind of high current applications without any sort of noise interference from the thing that's being monitored. They're also connectable to the IoT system directly, or you can bring data straight into your PLC over Modbus TCP IP or Ethernet IP from this device. The second kind of targeted device that we have in this line is our vibration and temperature node. So these are triaxial accelerometers with a temperature sensor on them. They can be magnetically deployed or permanently affixed to a rotating asset, a motor, a pump, a compressor, a bearing, to give you insight into what's happening inside that particular rotating asset, and ideally give you early indication of when that asset is starting to degrade or to fail. And I think I've got a slide here that kind of drives in on how we use that. So the second key to a system as a whole, and I'll talk about the vibration example in particular, is that we need data to kind of come into one place in order to be actionable. So again, if we can deploy a suite of sensors that's comprehensive, bring that data into one place, the next step is to make that data actionable. It's not just information that's sitting there, it needs to be processed. So The way that we do that, that's somewhat unique, is we focus on what we call a stream processing engine. So in the vibration example that I presented a couple slides ago, that node that sits out there will sample data at a very high rate from the triaxial accelerometer that's deployed on the motor. It brings that in, and it's actually going to process that down into a suite of about 65 actionable parameters that then is what is provided to the cloud or the PLC. And those 65 parameters are similar to what you get out of a vibration analyst that's actually doing a walkthrough of your facility. So instead of sending tens of thousands of data points at some rate, say once an hour, you're getting a small number of kind of process metrics that can immediately drive you to, hey, I have a bearing problem and I need to address that particular issue. So once we've got that in place, what do we need to do? We need to take those kind of actionable pieces of information and convey them in a number of different ways. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'm moving quick here. We do that in a couple of main ways. Number one, on the cloud side, we have what we call our maintenance hub. It's a cloud-based platform user interface for delivering information from our sensors to the user. It does all the things that you'd expect from an IoT system, including data visualization historically, alarms and alerting. It gives you the ability to plug in via API. There's lots of kind of just that standard guts of what you expect from an IoT system in the cloud that resides in our maintenance hub. We also, in that maintenance hub, have a targeted vibration analysis suite that's going to take data from those vibration sensors and provide them in a way that's consistent with what you'd see from a standard vibration analysis. And that will reside on each asset in the facility and give yet another level of insight into kind of what's actually transpiring inside that rotating piece of equipment. And then, it's just a blow up of kind of what that particular user interface looks like. Then from there, what is kind of coming next in that line of vibration-based technologies is what we call defect classification. So that's taking that data that we just provide, that process data, and actually giving targeted insights to the end user in terms of what the defect might be, right? Are you seeing a lubrication issue, an unbalanced, some sort of alignment problem, or is it a bearing issue that's driving that enhanced vibration? And so this is a component to our user interface that we're excited to roll out in the next kind of couple of months here. We're targeting. All right. So the last piece here, and I want to make sure I gave this some time for this particular audience, is how do we get that data and all those insights that we just talked about into the PLC? We find that probably 75% or more of our customers actually want some level of integration. So when we went to market with this, the thought was, hey, IoT is cloud-based, everybody's going to want it in the cloud. Well, I'd say 75% is actually low. Most of our customers want data either both in the cloud and in the PLC, or just in the PLC. And so the question that we tackled was, this is a typical IoT deployment that you see here, where you've got wireless sensors sending data to a gateway, pushing that data to the cloud, and then it's made available via the internet from there. How do we bridge that gap to a standard control system that's typically wired, but could be wireless into your PLC or your control system? So the question was really, how do we do that? And I want to touch on kind of real quick 3 different ways, and then we'll get into the AOP. So we could do it via API. That's where the SCADA or the PLC is pulling directly from our cloud, and we do support that. We could do this over an MQTT broker. We don't currently have that in production, but our system is capable of interfacing with an MQTT system if there's one that we could interface with. And then lastly, we have a direct connection over an Ethernet cable, right, using standard industrial protocols, Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP IP. So let's focus there. The way that typically works when we roll this out is we may have, if we have our whole product portfolio deployed, you've got some hotspot monitor deployed monitoring bus bar. It's pulling temperature data into a device that's monitoring those temperatures and making that wirelessly available to one of our gateways. Okay. On the other side of that, we've got some motors monitored by vibration nodes. Again, wirelessly, that's being communicated to one of our gateways. That gateway then is pushing data to the cloud over either Wi-Fi or LTE, and making that exact same data available to the PLC, in this case, let's say over Ethernet IP. All right, so yeah, without going into this, let's talk about how we do this in the Rockwell environment. So one of the complexities with this is that with an IoT system, it's by its very nature distributed and complex. So no gateway has the same memory map, right? In any application, you may see a totally different distribution of channels, of nodes that are deployed to that. So the complexity for driving this particular integration was how do we actually make a memory map available to a PLC that gets all the data and all the configurability of this IoT-based system into the control system. And the way we do that is we actually use our cloud. So whether or not our devices are actually connected to the cloud is used to configure your PLC. So the first thing you do is you quick come in. This is a handful of clicks and some tag naming, let's call it. So as you deploy vibration nodes, for example, on your assets, you're gonna say this is motor 10 on line 6, right? So you lay that out in the cloud and you queue up what sorts of analyses you want from each asset that you're deploying on. So again, this is typically for a deployment of say 10 to 40 nodes. This is like an hour or less of work to get this kind of laid out. And our application team typically works with the end user on how to do this. From there, you just can map the individual sensor to a gateway. And this typically isn't required in the wireless environment, but if you're going into a PLC, we need to basically build this memory map for the PLC. So this is a drag and drop. Again, this is a couple minutes, allow you to assign your nodes to the gateways that are going to convey that information to the PLC. From there, we export a file. So in the case of the add-on profile, there's just a drop down. You export this XML that you see here to the right side, store it to your PLC, and then when you bounce into Studio 5000, you load up our add-on profile, and it'll ask you to upload this XML file. You can see on the right side of the screen here. You just bring that in, and voila! At that point, all of the configurability of the wireless devices that sit outside of that gateway that configuration is ingested into the Studio 5000 environment. And if you spin up that controller, the tags that you're interested in monitoring from all of the wireless nodes that are connected into that gateway just become available. So a lot of that integration work is kind of done for you out of the cloud. So I do have a couple minutes left here. I did hit magically the 30-minute mark. I want to make sure there's, if there's any questions, I want to make sure I have time to kind of answer those. While I'm waiting to see if anybody chimes in with anything, I will say we have a webinar next week where a couple of our engineers are going to be presenting kind of a hands-on demonstration of how this system could be deployed on a vibrating asset. And over the course of that hour, you'll actually see this entire process play out from beginning to end, as if on a new piece of equipment, or you're just kind of bringing things in. Oh.
Okay, and that was masterfully done, on time. Excellent. If we have any questions, please type them in. I see we might have one in the chat now, or if you want to ask live, you can raise your hand. We can unmute your line as well.
Perfect.
So
I'll grab this one from Edward here. Do you have a list of sensor types? So yes, our data sheet will have that available for you. Typically, the easiest way that folks will integrate sensors to our panel mount platform is using either a 4 to 20 milliamp or a 0 to 10 volt connection, right? So you can find almost any transducer type in one of those two output styles. And we can integrate those relatively easily. There's also a handful of targeted sensor types, thermocouples, RTDs, strain gauges. Trying to think of what else might have its own. That require a bit of sensor conditioning. And we do have some sensor conditioning modules that allow for different types of sensors to come in that way. But yeah, I'd point you at the data sheet, which I'm sure we can make available. It is on our website. And yes, I believe so. We will be sharing the presentation. Is that true, Wayne?
Yes, if you're willing to share it with us, we will share it with our attendees.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So next question is about analytics, which is a really good question to ask. So, one of these keys, and I know I blasted through them today, but is taking raw data and using that data in a meaningful way, right? And so we typically bin that under the context of analytics. Our sensor devices themselves do some level of that autonomously. So if we're talking vibration analysis, a huge amount of the lift is done by the embedded software that we deploy on the node itself. That said, we do have an application support team on the IoT side that is available to kind of come alongside any customer in a deployment of this technology, and we want these to succeed. So we're really heavily invested in that early stage and making sure that the data that's being captured is actually driving real business value for you. So at a high level, we certainly make sure that the installations that happen are successful, but then we also do have packages that can be purchased. If you want our vibration expertise, for example, we can come alongside and do kind of a more targeted data analysis package where our application team works with you on a kind of a regular cadence throughout the lifetime of the product. So there are some offerings there. That is an excellent question, and we certainly get, anytime we interface with a customer, that cybersecurity question comes up. So I'm going to give you the 50-cent tour of my answer to that question. The number one hazard, I think, that a industrial customer should be concerned about when looking at IoT is, can an outside actor, by putting sensors on the plant floor, can an outside actor actually get in and start affecting your control systems? Right, that's the number one kind of risk or threat vector for an IoT system. That obviously would lead to lots and lots of problems. In our case, and in the case, I think, of most technologies that play in this space, there is a dividing line between data that's going to the cloud and data that's going to the PLC. There's actually an air gap there that prevents an outside actor from accessing the control network. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, we occasionally find a customer who is concerned about the data privacy aspect by sending data to the cloud. Our response to that is, obviously, we take every possible step to ensure that our customers' data is secure. That said, really what we're storing here is metadata about your equipment. So in the worst case, where there's a huge breach and someone has access to everything, really what they have access to is, you have a motor named X, and it's behaving in a certain way, right? There typically in an IoT deployment is not that secret sauce of like the process that's actually being run to create the product that's coming off your line. But it's definitely a serious kind of issue. And that's one of the reasons why we have a solution that can be either pushing data to the cloud, pushing data to the PLC, or both at the same time, because in some cases, it's just, there's a corporate requirement to eliminate that cloud completely. And we do support customers with fully on-prem deployments. So Edward, just to piggyback, I mean, feel free to reach out here directly. I'm happy to talk you through the cybersecurity aspects. It's definitely something to be aware of, and it's something that we're certainly concerned about, and I'd be happy to talk through that.
Yeah, we would invite all of our, if there's any interest, please reach out to your local Reynolds specialist or account manager, and as well, we'd be happy to help out. I agree with Jesse, with great presentation. Andy, you have risen the bar for all of our future Tech Talk presenters this year, so we're kicking off the year with a great start. Very good presentation. Thank you again, and thank you for attending.